Right, hello guys. Today in this video we will create a new module, our first module. So creating a module is straightforward in directory app code, and then in app code you put your namespace and module name or the package name, whatever it is. There's two ways of creating a module. It's either a composer module that will be going straight into the vendor, or you create a local module that is specific to clients in app code. So you would create a code folder, and inside the code folder you create your namespace. My namespace, I'll give it as a training, and then you give it the module. The module will be training and then some name. So I will give it also a example as module name, example. So this is the namespace. So inside app code, this is the namespace, and this is the module name. There are two files, or in the code, in app code, two files required to create a module. There are three files actually. So the module.xml file, the registration.php file, and composer.json file. Composer.json file is required for vendor modules like Composer, when you require the package itself or the module itself. However, we're not writing a vendor module, we write in an app code module. In app code module, two files required to create a module. The first one is module.xml, so it will be inside etc folder. So I'm creating directory etc, and then inside the etc I'll create module.xml. So this module.xml will contain the code or the XML content for it. So the module, you give it a name, training example, and that's it. This is all you need. So the config, and then the XMLNS, and then whatever attributes you have, you can copy this module from the vendor files and then put it in here. If you have any dependencies, you put it inside the sequence, and then the module name. We don't have any dependency yet, so we don't need this. So this is the first file we create. The second file we create is the registration file. So it's a PHP file, registration, and then inside the registration you put the code. I have it as a live template, and then you put training example. I'll just make this switch in to PHP 7. So the level, nothing in here. Okay, so these are the files required to create a module inside app code. And if I run the PHP Magento setup upgrade, now we've done the setup upgrade, we head to the code base, and then if we look for training example, you can see it's registered. This module is just registered. So this is how we create a module. The next step is code and configuration. The configuration will include the configure and put the necessary configuration for the module, for the other functionalities, and it will also help us with the database schema installation. And code also depends on the logic, business logic, and then the database modification. We will come to that later, but for now we have done creating the module. To prove this module is working, so I will just create a controller, and in this controller it just return a text, just a simple text. So inside etc I will create a file inside a front end called routes.xml. So inside etc front end routes, and then I put the necessary configuration for it. So the ID will be example, the front name will be example as well, and the module name I will just add a training example, and then before I don't need anything for this. So the ID is used for the layouts. We will come to that later. The front name is where you put this, like example, and then the route to the controller. So this is for the front end. If we go back to it, the module here, you don't confuse the module name as if this module name. This can be anything. You can just name it like example. I think this naming convention is reserved by Magento, so you don't want to use this. Instead, use your namespace and then the module name, whatever the module name. It could be just like foobar. That will work. So don't worry about this. This is just a random something you put, and then it will work. So it's not exactly the module itself. It's a module for the controller, for the front controller. So we just put it as a training example, and that's it. So this is how we configure the controller. The next step is to create the actual controller. Creating the actual controller will be have a directory called controller. This is necessary to have it. So all your controllers will be inside this controller. The controller will be your main folder that you put all your controllers or your actions inside it. Then I will have index folder and then index file. So this is index. I go declare namespace training. I did it right. Training example controller index. So just basic namespace in. So it comes from here. Training example controller index and then index. So up to this folder, and then you write the actual file class index, and then like this. You would implement the action interface. This action interface has a method to implement. It's called execute. This. It's called execute, this method. And if I just like die example, basically I think up to this point we will be able to access this controller. So we just click cache flush, Now we can have it like example as the front name in the routes. This example goes here, and then after it what we would do is have index and then the name of the controller. So this name comes first, the front name, and then whatever comes after controller, index as a small caps, index and index. Generating the generated folder, and then we'll die at this. Here you go. Basically the controller will return a result actually, and it doesn't just die or varchar or return text. It doesn't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to vendor and then Magento framework. In the framework there is a folder called controller, and in controller you get the results. You have those results returned by any controller. I'm looking at the row. This row returns just a content. So if I copy this as a full path or as a and use it here, and I use factory, we will come to that next. So result factory, and then initialize it. Basically this is the class. When you add a factory to it, just think of whenever you call this factory create method, you just like having a new row, a new instance of this class. So if you return this result factory create, if we look at the row, we have set contents. The contents is a string, so we just put here this is create and then set contents example. So here it is. I'll come to this. So what we're going to do is return a row instance, this class. The factory is a factory that will gives us, you append to a class name. So this is the class name, and then you append factory to it. Let's have a fully qualified. So this is the factory. Whenever you call this factory create, you are just like doing give me new row. So this is new row, and you don't need to worry about the parameters if they will be automatically injected into the class unless you want to override them, or they are not set up in the DI dependency injection configuration file. We come to all of this in the coming videos, but for now just have in mind that this result factory that comes as a row factory, when I call the create, it will give you a new instance. Every time you call create, it will give you a new instance of the row class, and then you call the set content on it, and you just put example. So if I think I have to remove, in order to run this, I have to remove generated code training. I have to remove this, and as you can see, it gives you example to make sure this is correct and not cached. Here you go. So this is how you create a controller, but the idea is not an explanation, is not to teaching how to create controller here. The idea is how to create our first module. Our first module comes in to play only, the module comes into play only when you have the module and registration file. Once you have those files, you have a module. If you don't have the registration file, you don't have a module. If you have a registration and don't have a module.xml, you don't have a module. You might have a module, but you don't have a configuration. It's not configured correctly. So this is the way how you create the module, and this is just to prove this is working module rather than an explanation of how to create a controller. We will come to the controllers and it will comes with different results like the raw, and if we go to the result, you have forward, you have JSON, you have all of these, and then you have page. It is not in there, but it's somewhere. You can have a page, and also you have a legacy return type. You won't touch them. You don't want to get involved in the legacy return types of the execute method. The only thing is you are interested in is the factory, whatever in the result of the controller. So this is it, I think, and that covers how you create the idea behind and how create a module. The controller is just to explain how it works. Don't worry about it for now, and I see you in the next video.